Welcome to the Grandpa Channel, where stories don't fade, they get recorded. I'm Steve Harris. My grandkids call me Ritters. This podcast is where grandpas and grandchildren pull up a chair, turn on a mic, and let her rip. Grandpa stories are chock full of wisdom, life lessons, and frankly funny as hell. Your stories are the magic elixir to help your grandkids navigate Mr. Toad's wild ride, aka life. Let's Grandpa. This episode of the Grandpa Channel is brought to you by Hires Big H, home of wonderful hamburgers, French fries, onion rings, the magical and medicinal, so I say, root beer freeze. Head to Hires and treat yourself like the legend that you are. Now back to the channel. Good afternoon and welcome to the Grandpa Channel. We have a wonderful guest today, our first international guest, and his name is Stephen Webster. And Stephen, I'd like to maybe have you tell our watchers and listeners a little bit about yourself and your family.
Thank you. Delighted to be here. My wife and I are visiting to spend some time with family and friends, and thank you for having us.
Oh, our pleasure.
I was born in England, and my parents decided to emigrate when I was 8 years of age to New Zealand. So I grew up in New Zealand, went to school there, and got my education. I served a mission there for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And we're very, very happy, and we've seen our children marry, and gosh, that was special to see each of them choose their sweetheart. And so they chose really well, and they've just blended in with our family. And I'd like to say we're one happy family. Most of the time we are. I was the only child. And so we decided fairly early in our marriage that maybe one was not quite enough. I didn't know how I could handle 8 girls.
Tell me where the kids live.
Our oldest and our youngest is in Sydney, Australia, one just 5 minutes away from us and the other one about 20 minutes away from us. We have one in Hamilton, New Zealand, and we have one in New York City. And he's there work-related. And so our family's spread all. And we don't mind that at the moment whilst we're able to travel and touch base and recognize significant events. It's nice to travel.
Tell me how you keep close and good tabs on family that's living in far-flung places in the world.
Yeah, so true. You know, our children are extremely good with technology. And I think our grandchildren will probably equal them or be better. But particularly the women in our family, we have a family chat messenger, and all the family events tend to go onto there. And then everybody comments on it. The other thing which one of my sons did, which I think was just magnificent, they bought us one of those photo frames, which is digital, and all the family members can load photographs onto it through our Webster family email address. And we've got that in a prominent place in our living room. And so between Messenger, Facebook, and I think it's called Skylight, we're able to see what happens. The other thing is, with those children that are close to us, we get invited to grandparents' days and to special events, school prize givings and sporting events. We've tried to follow each of our children, and we now do it with our grandchildren, where if they take up a sport on a Saturday morning, we'll often be found at cheering them on. And so, Steve, I can't say there's one thing that works for us. It's a couple of things. It's a basket of things. And for us, it just seems to work, and it's comfortable, and it's just the right amount of information coming in and information going out.
So tell me what's in the basket. How you've got technology.
We've got technology, and we've got connection. We've also got photographs coming in so we can see their progression, and our grandchildren grow so quickly. you can almost see the difference from one visit to another. And they're so active. It's up to us to keep a prominent place, but to know our place. We also try to recognize we're the grandparents and not the parents, but we want a place. We want to be seen. We want to be heard. And we want to be loved because we love them. And each of our grandchildren are different.
That's a great point. Great point.
I have one of our granddaughters. Whenever she sees us, she will run to hug me. I have a grandson who I could fall over and he would say boo. He just would. And I think you've got to recognize that not all are the same. I mean, you try to treat them all the same. You try to be fair and equal to every single one of them. But some respond differently. They respond how they feel. And I feel this grandson in time will change. And it's not for us to make the change. It's for us to facilitate and for him to make the change. And so, as I said, with technology, our photographs, one of the things we had done, Steve, and I probably get more credit on this one than maybe I'm deserving, but Rosalie and I make a conscious effort to build memories. And we found as parents, building memories enabled us to be better parents. And so with our children and our grandchildren, we take very seriously the opportunity to build memories. And we will spend time together away from our homes or away from familiar environment and try to get everybody involved. And so we've had some wonderful family holidays to destinations which are just miraculous.
Tell me about a couple of the destinations.
Many years ago, we took all the family to Hong Kong. And we did that because, one, Disneyland's there. But more importantly, we had a daughter-in-law who served in Hong Kong. And she's Cantonese speaking. And she wanted to go back. And we wanted to, I guess, experience just a little bit of the culture that she had. Now, she was wonderful because she spoke the language. And so we had a fabulous time there. Yes, we've done the West Coast of America. We've done Disneyland. We've done Knott's Berry Farm. I don't mean to be advertising these places, but we've done all the theme parks and we've done the things that the kids want. But we've also done temple sites and we've done sacred sites. To me, there is a hill in Devonport, New Zealand, and it's just down the road where we lived when I was 8 years of age, probably a couple of years. And I went to school there, and I wanted to show my grandchildren where I went to school. And then there is an old picture theater. Now, that's telling you my age when I call them pictures. You would call it a movie theater or whatever, but it was a picture theater back then. Being part of the British Commonwealth, we used to stand up for the national anthem before the movie was played. And in New Zealand, they have a confectionery called a Jaffa. And a Jaffa is an orange-coated chocolate inside sweet, perfectly round. And this theater had wood floors that would step down. And in my younger days, I'm not necessarily proud of this, but I don't mind it. I would drop a Jaffa on the floor, and it would go down the steps all the way to the front, clanking. Yeah. And I got great joy out of that. And I thought my grandchildren would like to hear that. And they wanted the Jaffa, but they didn't necessarily want the picture theater. They thought that my picture theater was a little old school. We've done some other fun things. We have a daughter and a son-in-law and 4 of our grandchildren who live in New York. And We were planning on spending a Christmas in New Zealand where everybody could get together. But circumstances changed at the last minute, so we took the step and we brought everybody to New York. And yes, we went to the theater and we went to plays and we went to the ice rink there and we knew all the touristy things. But we also took our grandchildren to visit the temple. Mm-hmm. And the temple's important to us as being members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. But we try to mix it. We try not to overdo all the play or all the one-sided thing that many of our children want, technology and that sort of thing. And that's one of my worries. I've got to confess as a grandfather, I didn't have technology growing up. In fact, I was working by the time I got my first mobile phone, and it was the size of a brick. And now when you see how much is available in your palm, one of the things that worries me is the time that our grandchildren and children, I think, in general, spend on technology. It's got its place, don't get me wrong. And there are also many parents who at times are grateful for it because it just gives them a little bit of rest and restraint. Yeah. But there's got to be control. So if you can find the balance, I think it's wonderful.
So how would you as a grandfather, kind of goes with what you were saying about carving out your role as a grandfather. I know my wife and I don't want to be the disciplinarian grandparents, but how do you have any ideas on how to carve out and what to do? It's almost like you against technology a little bit. Not quite that.
No, Steve, I agree with you.
Yeah.
And I will always come second to technology at the moment because they're engrossed in it and they're totally absorbed in it. The way that we have found is to ask questions. What did you do today? What did you do yesterday? What is your favorite subject at school? Do you have something that you can show us that you did? If we can start a conversation, then momentarily it takes their mind away from technology and in the moment. And somehow, Steve, you've got to capture those moments. Sometimes they few, sometimes they plenty. It's up to the grandchild. And I agree with you, we're not the disciplinarians, and I never want to be. But I don't want to shy away from also saying, don't you have a few moments for your grandparents? We just want to know how things are going, what you're doing, what you're up to.
What you said kind of reminded me of the time my oldest son and my daughter-in-law have 4 kids, and we were traveling by car from here down to Pasadena, California, to watch the Rose Bowl a couple of years ago. Right? And I'm noise sensitive. Go figure why I have 7 kids. But all of the electronic noise was driving me crazy. And so I just had this thought come into my mind. And I said, do you guys want to hear some stories about what your dad was like when he was a little boy? And all of a sudden, they paid attention. And so what was going to be a terribly long 10 hours or more car ride turned out to kind of go lickety-split. And so I would tell stories after stories about my son, about me. And they like stories where I kind of look like I'm an idiot. Gratefully, there's many of those stories available. They like to laugh. And my theory with boys is that if you keep them fed and make them laugh, you're doing okay. You're going to be in pretty good shape. But I just think that, and it turned out to be, was a wonderful opportunity to teach family history too. And so you could kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone. But I still have some of those kids they'll say, tell me that story about where you wrecked the family station wagon. And so anyway, that reminded me when you were talking about that, this is wonderful stuff.
You know, Steve, we've done that. I should probably tell you that our youngest grandchild is 3, and our oldest has his 21st birthday this month. And there's another 13 between that. We really at the stage where we span the spectrum. The son, who was created enough to give us the skylight picture frame a couple of years prior to that, became familiar with a company called Storyworth. Now, this isn't the only company. We found a number. It's an annual subscription, and each week or fortnight. Now, that's the English coming out with the. I should ask for a translator. I should say 2 weeks, or 14 days. They will send you a question, and you write about that question. And you have the opportunity of either taking the questions that they send, or the family can write questions that they would like to answer. And so I thought this was a great idea. And after the first couple of stories that I wrote, I became addicted to it. And for a whole year, I wrote stories on the questions that they wanted to ask me. And at the end of the annual subscription period, they took everything I had written, plus photographs that I had sent, and bound it into a book.
Wow.
And so I have a book on the thoughts and feelings of me from a young age to where I am today. And then I gifted that book to each of them. And one of the things that prompted me to do that, Steve, was that I started to try to do that with my father. I was the only child, and I had the most amazing parents. I was blessed to be their son. And they're what we call builders. The demographic before me, who's a baby boomer, they were builders, and they went through some hardships, especially in England. And I asked my dad to write about some of his experiences, and he was in World War II, and he was stationed in India, in northern India. I was old enough to appreciate what he wrote and what he went through. And I think in a way, it made me more understanding, more compassionate. I want to say more loving, and maybe some of your listeners will say, well, how can you be more loving with something like that? And it has to do with legacy. It has to do with experiences in your family that you want to measure up to and carry on into the next gen. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. I think it also increases empathy.
Yes.
Your dad and what your grandfather. Do you have any recollection of your grandfather?
None whatsoever.
They passed away before you.
On both sides.
Yeah, I'm in the same situation too.
The sad thing about what I did with my dad is I missed the last 25 years of his life. I was summoning tender starting in the beginning. As his health deteriorated, he was unable to fill in that last 25 years. And if I have a regret, and I don't have many regrets, I've been very, very blessed and fortunate, I missed that. And so I tried a little harder with my mother. And I must admit it was easy because she grew up being a shorthand typist. And you probably don't know what a shorthand typist was, but most young women who left school in the generation before mine went into office work. And shorthand was the forerunner to Google Translate, those dictaphone machines and that sort of thing, where you would scribble funny characters and it all meant something. But I just felt a greater affinity to my father's stories. Maybe it's a male thing, or maybe it's that I loved him so much I wanted to emulate.
How would you describe your dad?
Consistent, caring, stable, loving, and somebody you could always depend on. Well, he never, ever let me down. I remember my earliest recollections. I was looking through my my bedroom window down at the garage, which was at the back of our house. And he was a motor mechanic. A motor mechanic before cars were mainly controlled with computer chips and circuitry and everything like that. He was old school. He taught me how to keep it.
Was he patient?
Yes.
And teaching?
Yes. I'm not sure I do as well as he did. Mm-hmm. Remember, I was the only child. Mm-hmm. And we're blessed with 4 children and, as I say, 15 grandchildren. But there are many attributes in my father that I desperately want to emulate because he was so good.
If your dad were to magically appear on our broadcast, that'd be quite an event, wouldn't I? What would you tell him?
I would just say, Dad, thank you for setting the example for me to be hopefully a better husband, a better father, a better grandfather. All I want to do is say thank you.
When did he pass away?
He passed away a number of years ago, and so he did not see his grandchildren.
Really?
And my mother was able to see many of our grandchildren.
Was he able to do what you have done and establish individual relationships with your kids as they were growing up?
Yes.
Yeah. Is he a natural at it?
I don't think it came naturally to him in the beginning. I'm an only child.
Wow.
And we're talking post-war in England. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that I was able to do is I was able to care for them both in their later years. And that was one of the greatest honors of my life.
They sound like such lovely people. You're very lucky.
Now, Steve, I did a couple of things right. I'm sure I did things wrong. But, a daughter-in-law is different than a daughter. And I don't care what you say, she is.
I agree with you.
And so I made sure we had 2 kitchens. And that was Stair and Rosalie. Because with a growing family coming and going, and I was very busy in my career and other activities, meal times would often last from, 4 o'clock to get the kids off to practice and that sort of thing to 8 o'clock. And my mother could have never handled that. So in her kitchen or kitchenette, she was able to control and meet their deadlines. And Rosalie didn't have anybody fussing or moving her things in her kitchen.
It's a great idea.
That lasted for nearly 22 years.
So now I got a change of pace question for you. I want you to briefly describe for us the time and what you did in Africa. And then here's the surprise question that I didn't think it was coming, but it is. What did you learn from your missionaries and from the people of Ghana? What did you observe, and how has that helped you as a grandfather?
Steve, how long does this podcast go for? I had my 60th birthday and was blessed to be in a position to want to give back. And so Rosalie and I chose to put our hands up for voluntary service. And we did that within our faith because it was secure and there were many opportunities. So yes, we went to Africa for West Africa, Ghana, Accra, Ghana for 18 months. And we did a lot of administrative work, but behind the scenes, there were 3 or 4 main projects that we were involved with, as well as many other people. We cannot take credit for this. We've got to share it. But one of them was clean drinking water. One of them was literacy. Another was wheelchairs. There are a lot of broken people in Ghana. Wheelchairs give them independence. We had one instance where a loving husband would carry his wife from their house to the front of the house, and she'd sit there all day selling bits and pieces. And then when he came home, he would carry her back. A wheelchair made it possible for her to go back to the house when she needed to for hygiene purposes, etc., and get back. And the smile on her face. Water is collected 5, 6, 7, 8 times a day, predominantly by African women. And they had these huge bowls on their head. And in one instance, it was 900 meters down a hill to a little bubbling part of water, and 900 back 5, 6 times a day. And we were able to pump that water up to a concrete pad with various taps at the levels where they could fill. And I asked one of the women, I said, what has this done for you? And she said, oh, it's made life easier. And it had, but I wanted to be more specific. She said, what it has given me is time to grow vegetables to sell so we can eat. Wow. And when you say, what did Africa do for us? I think it opened our minds. It allowed us to give thanks for the many blessings that we have, but it also allowed us to see what they go through empathetic eyes. We were home just a year after our time there in 18 months, and we were asked to go back for 3 years.
And what was your reaction? Initially,
I would have liked another experience. I mean, I'd been to Africa. I'd been to West Africa. I thought, let's just open up the world a little bit more. Hawaii sounded good. Sipping pina coladas, on the beachfront. I could have handled that for a while. We got rural Africa, 5 hours north of Accra. Have you seen those round huts with grass?
Yeah.
That's where we were. What that allowed us to do was to get to know the people. And in getting to know the people, you learn to love the people. And we made so many special, almost sacred relationships. I think it allowed me to appreciate more what we have, to give back as much and as often as I could, but to recognize how fortunate our children. And if I could take them from where they are, with or without their technology, and plonk them in the middle of Kumasi, Ghana, I would love to do that.
Why? What would it?
I'd like to see them squirm. I'd like to see them out of their comfort zone. I'd like to see them struggle to find something that they like to eat. I'd like to show them how other people live. I'd like their praise of gratitude to be more meaningful because they've seen what some have and what many don't have and will never have. They'll never have.
That would be a challenge for you and Rosalie, I would imagine, with the circumstances under which you live right now, maybe to some degree under which we live. How do you teach those things? And how do you hope that children have experiences like that would truly help them become more grateful and more empathetic of other people's lives? What countries did your missionaries come from? How many missionaries did you have when you were in the 3 years in Ghana?
In the Ghana Kumasi mission where we served, we had 524 missionaries throughout that 3-year service. A mission leader has responsibility for the physical, the mental, and the emotional well-being of a missionary. It's important that they sleep well, that they receive the sustenance that they need, so then they can go out and serve. And missionary service is all about service to others. We believe in the first 2 commandments, love of God and love of fellow men, and our missionaries take that second commandment literally as we do. So as a mission leader, you feel a great weight of responsibility. We had a very small percentage of Europeans. We probably had 30% Europeans serve during the time we were there. The vast majority were from the African nations.
Like what nations?
Nigeria, Uganda, South Africa, Kenya, Mozambique, Benin, Togo. It was a melting pot. And each of them brought their cultural differences, good and bad diversities. It's interesting, many of our African missionaries arrived with a plastic bag, and in that plastic bag would maybe be a couple of pair of socks. I'm talking about the elders or the males, maybe a couple of shirts and a pair of pants. And I arrived with my 2 suitcases and, 12 shirts and and 2 pair of shoes. Well, 3 pair of shoes. And my wife brought even more. But it's the difference. But that was all they had. And the wonderful thing about missions is you bring all that you can. And through various means, the Lord and wonderful people expand it and give you what you need. We were fortunate that we had some missionaries who had been there previous to us and who had gone home and told their families about this wonderful experience and time that they had. And their mothers got together and found donated shirts and slacks and belts and shoes. And our hallway in the mission home was like a men's and women's wear store. We had racks of everything. So we could look at that plastic bag that a missionary had been given to arrive in our mission, and we could add a few more things that they needed. And so Heavenly Father often does that with us in life. He says, bring all that you've got and let me add unto it. And I guess as a grandparent, it's almost similar. You give all that you can, bearing in mind that you're not the parents and you don't want to spoil them. And you also want to see their parents struggle a little. You don't want to coming too soon, but you don't want to be too late either. When Rosalie and I were married, the only honeymoon that I could afford was a 2-hour drive from where we lived. There was nothing wrong with that honeymoon whatsoever. And that's 28 years ago this month. Now, the hotel is no longer there. Well, I don't even think it was a hotel. The motel was no longer there. But our children have been blessed to go to some exotic places. You don't want to rush in too quickly. You want to let them figure things out. And the same with our grandchildren. But I do want to be there.
How do you find is the best way to share stories with your grandchildren, Steve?
Steve, you brought up a wonderful point in the car trip. On trips we have tried I Spy with my little eye. How many horses? Let's take the alphabet starting at A and name something. How many colors can you see? And because of the diversity of ages, sometimes it's worked for us and sometimes it hasn't. We have found that when our grandchildren get a little bit of maturity, they want to know what life was like when Nana and Papa, which is what they called us, were growing up. I must admit, I like telling them stories about their parents and some of the things that their parents did. We have a favorite where our son found a bucket of paintbrushes that I was trying to soften with paint stripper. He grabbed that and painted his mother's car 2 beautiful stripes with paint stripper. Now, I need to tell you that he did it, not I, but Rosalie, his mother, my wife, blames me for leaving the paintbrushes accessible. I'm not guilty. My son did it, not me. Those are the sort of stories that we try to tell, and we try to tell it to the age that they're at without telling too many family secrets.
I have a grandson who loves his dad. He's 6 going on 7. And he just thinks his dad's the very dust, and he is. He's a great father and great husband, and a wonderful son. But he came up to me one time and he said, Rivers, he said, did my grandpa watch YouTube when he was a little boy? And I looked at him and I said, Ford, there was no such thing as YouTube when your dad was little. And the look of shock on my grandson's face was priceless. Because I'm sure that they had some discussions about maybe you're watching a little bit too much. And he wanted desperately to be a good little boy, and he wanted to know what his dad did. I just think that one of the challenges that we have as grandpas is how to tell good stories, how to tell them at appropriate times. And I think we miss the boat more than we get on the boat. And I just think that there's so many opportunities to teach. And I think that you're right. I think there is a certain age at which kids go, what was my dad like? What was my mom like? What were you like? That you ancient dinosaur grandfather of mine. And I think we missed some opportunities.
Look, I think sometimes our grandchildren would like some dirt on their parents. And I think you've got to recognize the humor in that and be careful. I'm pleased to say that my boys watched what I did, and so they're both capable of taking care of things. And I think the girls probably watched Rosalie, and they're wonderful homemakers and can cook and sew. And I'd like to think, though, that my daughters also watched a little of what I did.
So kind of coming down the home stretch here. My theory is that all grandfathers have superpowers. Some of them are latent. Some of them are hidden by too much golf, too much sports on TV, or maybe you're just in a bad place. There could be physical issues or ailments. But I honestly believe that we all want to upscale and up-level our grandparenting game. And I really believe with all my heart that we each have superpowers. Stephen, what are a superpower or two that you have?
I think I have a couple. I'm thrilled to bits that you've labeled it, because you've just elevated me in my own mind.
I don't know if that was the
sound that I got, superpowers. Yeah. The first one is, I think, a desire to be involved. And blessedly, we're accepted and invited, and we accept those invitations and we're there. I think the other thing is that we try to be approachable. If somebody's drawing a picture, then you get down and talk about the picture. If someone's maybe looking at a movie, you ask what the movie is about. And so you gear your questions to the age of the individual. The other thing is that I'm big on recognizing special events, birthdays, Christmas, graduations, school, social days. If our school sports days, Saturday basketballs, football, netball we've got in Australia, if the kids are playing, then I'd like to be there. And so if I have a superpower, it's that I want to be there, I want to be approachable, and I want to live with them in the moment.
That makes perfect sense, but I want to hone in on, I love the idea of approachable. I mean, I have a grumpy mode sometimes that I'm not very proud of. I don't bark, but I can be a little short. But what do you think? How would you advise people like me and some other people who want to become more approachable to their grandchildren? What ideas might you have?
You know, Steve, I don't think I've got a grumpy mode. I think I've got a quiet mode. I think when I maybe, got figures on my mind or something, maybe I just go quiet. To all the grandparents out there, and particularly the grandparents, I think you've got to find your level of involvement, your level of participation, as long as family allows you to do that. But I think you've got to talk about things. I think you've got to have the conversation. We have a daughter-in-law who grew up without a father. Her mother was an angel. And and this daughter-in-law has turned out absolutely perfect, but she didn't have a father. And so often she'll come to me and ask me about fatherly advice. And I want my grandchildren to come to me and ask me about grandparent advice. I want to be approachable and I want to be there.
Wow. This has been a great episode. We need to invite like dozens more. Are there dozens like you in Australia?
Oh, I think there's more than dozens. You'll find them.
We'll find them. This has been really good. And there's been a couple of things that I'm thinking, man, how come I'm not doing that? And I should do it. But I really want to thank you, Steve Skeasley. And it's been a lovely conversation. I wish you Godspeed going back to your land of Australia.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
That's it for today's episode of the Grandpa Channel. Leave a review, share it with a friend, or better yet, tell your favorite grandpa. We're on a mission to gather 1 million grandpas, storytellers, wisdom keepers, and lovable wild cards. Until next time, keep the mic hot, the memories fresh, and the jokes just slightly inappropriate. I'm out of here.